Tell me something. You can go anywhere. Another timeline. Another universe. So why do you want to stay and fight to save this one? Because this is the world where my mom lives.
That's it? Really?
Da, 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 da! You sound insane. You realize that? Yeah. The whole world gone crazy! Seriously? It's showtime.
Excellent. What's going on, man? Flash fans, sons of illustrious father fans out there coming to vibe with us this week. It is your boy, Big Army Richard here. With me as always, or not always, but most of the time is Brian. And if you notice, if I'm leading off this, that means we're probably sans Kent this week. Kent is in places unknown. He's like the Undertaker. He does that every once in a while. He's from parts unknown, but he's out this week because, let's be honest about it. Marvel paid us for him to not be on the episode, as they always do. Mm-hmm. For their propaganda purposes. So that's working out great. And I just bought, I don't know if I told you, Brian, I got my 11th jet ski.
Awesome.
Because it's like 10 is like, a lot of guys have 10, right?
Right.
Clean number, but 11's,
Yeah.
you know, that's where the real ballers live. Me and
Put
Chandler
you into
Parsons.
the true like 1%.
Yeah.
Of jet
Yeah.
ski. It's
I
like
don't know,
you and
dude.
Chandler Parsons.
That feels like some real poor, that feels like some real poor material right there. Call me back when you have a baker's dozen jet skis. That's
okay.
yeah.
Crap. All right. I always thought it'd be a move. I used to live, I don't think Shane ever came. Oh, by the way, Shane's with us too, Batman Shane, as he is with all DC movies as well.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
buddy?
That's what we would use lots of money for, by the way. If If you're curious about how would we spend our money, it would be a lot of like real charity, like stuff for good. A lot of this person has terrible hospital bills because we live in a hellscape. Cool, I've got you. I covered it. Like we're
but
good.
then most of it messing with our friends,
and then a
people.
lot of like really petty pranks that don't really serve a whole lot of purpose other than we are just laughing so hard
and just
into
mind
a
games.
very expensive liquor.
I invite Shane over out for drinks, and I just kind of, and he knows I'm worth $600 million, and I just look at him after like the second old fashioned. I'm like, hey, I'll pay you $7 million to divorce Angela, and you can't tell her why. And just watch him be like, oh my God, I love my wife. But just, obviously we all have a number.
$7 million would fund my Flash movie. I mean.
But yeah, that kind of stuff would be great. Just, offering friends
Adam,
exorbitant
you
amount
could
of
do the
money.
Larry David thing of opening up spite shops next to the
a lot
places
of
that you
spice
hate.
stores,
Yeah.
for sure.
Anywho, Shane came on the show for the first time. Was it BVS?
Oh man, it might have been. It was either like the '89 Batman or it was Batman versus Superman. I don't even remember, but it could have been. Yeah,
because the Brian, as the historian of the show, can tell you, were we doing this for Man of Steel?
Yes.
Okay, good. Because I saw
it was 2013. I think. Yeah.
Because I saw Man of Steel in the theater. And if we weren't doing this podcast, that'd be very confusing historically to me.
You did also. You saw a solid 35 minutes of Green Lantern pre-pod.
I did.
There's that.
I did. Yeah. Yeah. What a time. What a time.
All right. See you later. And he just walked out.
My other spite store would be I'd invest in that other team that Wrexham's rivaled with, and I'd just take out Ryan Reynolds was Wrexham, and then when he's like, "Why do you hate me so much?" I'll be like, "Green Lantern, dude."
Yeah.
My friend Brian talked me into a midnight showing.
in
what 2010.
You did. So young. We were so young.
And I've been waiting. It's like that Will Forte and I Think You Should Leave. I've been waiting for 13 years for this moment. So we've done a fair amount of these. They are not quite as prolific as the MCU in terms of output, but there's been, I would say, I'm not going to count. I actually want to think, 9 of these. Does that seem right? Shane, you'll know. How many
I
DC?
mean, off the top of my head, yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, I don't even know if we're in double digits at this point.
Yeah.
Certainly not with the DC EU per se,
Sure.
but just DC movies in general, like Lego Batman and Joker, we're probably in the low double digits, probably 10, 12, somewhere in that ballpark.
Here we go. We've got Man of Steel,
Yep.
BVS, Suicide Squad. What a time. Wonder Woman.
Okay.
The first Justice League. Aquaman is 6. Shazam 7.
All right.
Harley Quinn 8. Wonder Woman 84 9. Zack Snyder's Justice League 10. The Suicide Squad 11.
Okay.
Black Adam, Shazam, and now The Flash. So 14.
14.
14 DC
Wow.
EUs. Yeah. All great, obviously.
Wonder Woman was cool, man.
Yeah.
So we've done a lot of these. Shane's been on for most of these. Shane is, for those level setting coming on Shane, on this, Brian and I are huge nerds. We're not particularly big Brian a little more than me, but not super comic booky. Kind of came to, I mean, obviously we were aware of Batman and Superman, but kind of came to know these more nuanced characters only through this universe and Marvel's, right? And then maybe like some. Shane is like a big time DC fan, particularly Batman. That's his like whole like hobby and stuff. So we never want to be too neg on here because we have had issues with these. We don't. I think we're always pretty clear that we don't really blame the DC properties for these movies not being very good. I normally blame Warner Brothers and Zack Snyder for the most part. So I want to be clear on that. But we do want to always have a voice of reason. And Brian and I both, I don't know how Shane feels on this, are not, even before he became a sort of D-team Jared Leto, huge Ezra Miller fans, just like not, he's just not a very good actor. So we were not especially looking forward to this. However, as this got closer to happening, we started seeing promotional stuff and buzz about it. The rumor was that this was actually pretty well done, and obviously the Michael Keaton piece and all of that. So there were things to be excited about this. Shane, I'm going to save you for last because you are the expert. So I want your full did this satisfy fanboy Shane enough, which is it was an important audience. But Brian, I will go to you first. I think I summarized a bit how you felt coming in, and we also have a bit of multiverse exhaustion, which is certainly not entirely DC's fault.
Yeah.
All of this is a stew of coming into this confused. So go.
Yeah, I did not enjoy this. The deal is, I said this coming into seeing the movie. Whether you choose to believe or not, I really do try to go into every movie with, if not like a fully open mind, then at least like, hey, I hope I enjoy this. That's. I very rarely am like, God, I hope this is freaking terrible. You know, because I got to spend 2.5 hours doing this, plus the trailers and plus the miserable theater experience half the time and all these things. Like it's not, I don't know, like the truly terrible movies, like the 3 worst movies of the year, especially when they're not properties that I have any interest in, you know, or any familiarity. I kind of enjoy that to some extent. Like the really bad Transformers movies, I kind of enjoy that because it's just so bad that you're just like, oh man, at least this gives us something to talk about, you know? So I want to be able to walk out of every movie I see and be like, yeah, it was fine, at the very least, just from an enjoyment standpoint. That doesn't make for a great podcast, as we've said many, many times. Like, Bees are the toughest movies to talk about a lot of times, but just in terms of how am I using my time, I'd really like to enjoy the movie. What I said going into this one was my worry is, if the concept is great, these are big ifs. If the concept is great, and Keaton Batman is awesome, and it's just so cool to have him back, and the direction is a lot better than where we've been previously. If all of these things are true, but I still have to deal with 2 Ezra Millers, I don't know how I'm going to be able to enjoy that movie, because I think that Ezra Miller is a terrible actor, and the concept for this character, it just makes, it's like it's purposefully obnoxious. Like that's his whole bit, is just to be obnoxious is giving it too much credit. Insufferable is. Yeah. It seems like when Ezra Miller was cast, the direction that they were given was just be like so insufferable that people like hate their lives. That's what we're going for. And now they can't let this go, I guess. So that was my concern going in, was just like, I would like to at least be able to say, yeah, it was fine. And we have seen an uptick just slightly, at least a little bit with, Black Adam notwithstanding, but I think we all relatively enjoyed Shazam 2, generally speaking, and clearing out the Snyder of it all, I think is very good for this whole franchise or universe or whatever. So like, there's some positive signs, and I know that this is a holdover from the old guard, and I'm sure we'll get into that, Shane. But this was kind of a miserable experience for me, and would have been a fully like, okay, I am talking about this in the same vein as some of these other awful movies that I've hated over the years, if not for the Keaton part of this thing. I think that is, if there's a saving grace for this, it's Michael Keaton and that version of Batman. But then at the same time, that just makes me more frustrated, because it's like, just do that. Just do old Batman. That would have been so much cooler than this. And then when you get into all of the just the gymnastics that DC and Warner Brothers have done to make sure that this movie is Ezra Miller, two Ezra Millers, is baffling to me. It's like, if this person was like Daniel Day-Lewis level actor, then like, I'm not saying you excuse their god awful terrible behavior, but you at least are like, yeah, I kind of get it. They're a great actor, so whatever. But this sucks. It's just so bad to sit there and try to squeeze through to deal with now two of them. So anyway, would have liked to have said, oh yeah, it was fine. This is, hey, we're Gunn's influence is already there a little bit, right? Like we're sort of closing this chapter of DC Extended Universe on a high, or at least like on a mid. And I did not enjoy this at all.
Too much Ezra. Shane, what about you, man? How were you? How do you feel about it all?
Look, I've seen Ezra Miller in very limited things. I saw their performance in Perks of Being a Wallflower, and I thought they were pretty good in that movie. Short of that, I think I've only seen Ezra in this DC universe thing. I can't think of any other movie that I've seen Ezra Miller in off the top of my head. I thought that Ezra Miller was great in The Perks of Being a Wallflower. And I think they're fine in this. Part of it to me is like this version of the character is by design kind of annoying. And so, it's fine. The performance didn't bother me at all, because it's been consistent, at least with how they were portrayed in the Batman v Superman. The Flash was only in Batman v Superman for 1 second, and then the Flash was in the Zack Snyder's Justice League for a pretty big chunk of it. So realistically, there's like one movie that we're just basing this performance off of, and it was fine. It didn't bother me at all, and I would disagree. I thought that they were pretty good in this movie. But again, just that's my take. Is I thought they were pretty good.
No, totally fair. How did you feel about the kind of? I can imagine. I'm sitting there picturing the basketball line when there's multiple Batmans in a movie. You're going to definitely going to be you're excited to feel these nipples, Shane. So,
for sure.
This is like Shane Byerly fantasy camp here. So, did that deliver on the promise of a multiverse Batman?
Yeah, for sure, man. I wish I would have gotten like a little bit more like. It would have been cool to get like a Spider-Man No Way Home moment where it's like they're all on screen together doing stuff. I think that would have made my head explode. But, it was. But
Affleck has the Phil Knight hair, kind of like they couldn't get the mustache off Henry Cavill.
No shoes either, because he just refused to wear them.
The tights. Why are those tights purple?
Yeah. He's got a fanny pack too. That's a bizarre choice.
This Batman rules.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, I enjoyed it. It's, this movie to me has a lot of fan servicey moments, right? And I think if you're not a fan, it's fine to criticize them. But as a target market for this fandom, I loved it, right? I thought it like those moments that hit that fandom stuff worked for me, right? Like in The Force Awakens when, again, I like Star Wars. I don't love Star Wars. It's not, it's nowhere near my top 5 favorite properties of all time. So the moment in The Force Awakens when Chewie and Han walk back on the Millennium Falcon and they go, "Oh, we're home." And the whole theater lost their minds. I'm sitting there going, whatever. But Michael Keaton shows up on screen and goes, "I'm Batman." And I'm like, I time travel. I'm instantly, 5 years old again watching this movie, and I'm like, yay, this is awesome. So it worked for me, and overall, I think it worked for me. One thing I will say that, and maybe I'd be curious to hear you guys' thoughts on this, and maybe I'm not thinking of other movies in the recent past that have done this, but I did think about this when I saw The Flash. I was like, we've cracked the code on the whole body double face replacement thing. There was not a single shot of Ezra Miller, where I was able to really tell, oh, this is the stunt double, or oh, this is CG. It was flawless. As far as I was concerned with that body replacement thing, I'm like, man, we've nailed it. We cracked the code,
No, totally. Now, I mean, just think about what we can do with that Woody Harrelson wise. And now you threw me.
We can have quad Harrelsons.
Quad Harrelsons, bro.
Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah. John and Kate plus 8 Woodies. That's a great joke from 14 years ago. The one thing I will grant you, Shane, on this, and I want to make sure it's said plainly, I will give this movie a lot of it, which is why I will grade it higher than a lot of the Snyder stuff, in that, oh my God, at least a few times it tried to be fun. It may have swung and missed on that a few times, because you might find Ezra Miller's character grading or whatever, or something didn't work, whatever. But I give it so much more credit than those movies, because it's not just look how dark and dreary these superheroes. They're so sad.
Right.
It's a superhero movie that you can do sad superheroes. One could argue Christopher Nolan did that pretty well. But you better be Christopher Nolan. It's a hard thing to pull off, and it's much easier to pull off something that has a little more verve like this. And I do give it credit for that.
Yeah, for sure. I'd agree.
Yeah. And there's a color palette. I mean, I think a lot of this movie looks awful. They pretty clearly spent all of the special effects budget on having 2 Ezra Millers, and because
the rest was a TikTok filter, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it looks terrible, and this director drives me. I do not like. I can't stand this director, and his whole bit of, oh no, we did this on purpose. No, you did not. No, you did not do this on purpose. You did not make your movie look terrible on purpose. You cheaped out on special effects. We all know that's how this works.
Let's split the difference.
At least there was a color palette, I would say.
Let's split the difference, which is, okay, we did it on purpose. Fine, you did it on purpose. I believe you. It doesn't look great, but you know what I mean? Fine, you did it on purpose. I believe it.
Yeah, congrats on your terrible taste, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Either way, it's an L, but
yeah.
No, but it, that's been one of my complaints about the Snyderverse, is that the only color palette is gray and also dreary. That's the other color that's involved in these movies.
Rain and gray.
Yeah.
Well,
so this one having some attempt to expand into the other crayons and whatnot was nice as compared to that.
Let's talk a little bit about the history of this movie, because it certainly has, for folks who are fans of not even the DC universe, but folks who are just fans of movies and the movie industry in general, this definitely has a pretty long and storied history. So Ezra Miller got cast as the Flash in 2014, which was surprising for me to learn, because I thought that wouldn't have happened until barest minimum 2016, because that was when Batman v Superman came out. That's when the Flash had his little cameo, and it just felt like a last minute thing. But apparently Ezra Miller was cast in 2014. So then Batman v Superman comes out, then the Justice League comes out in 2017, right? And then Apparently the original Flash movie was supposed to hit theaters in 2018. So that's in theory how long this movie has been delayed. And then obviously with all the shakeups with the Justice League and the Zack Snyder business and all that, and then the pandemic hit, and that delayed everything by years and years. And then I think, honestly, with all the shakeups with like trying to reshoot the Zack Snyder Justice League, and then also like trying to reshoot Aquaman, and now the DC universe is shifting and changing again. Like it like changed the nature of this script and this screenplay like 3 or 4 different times. So it is kind of amazing that ultimately this movie crossed the finish line, because for a period of time it started to feel like this was a movie that would never come out. Yeah. But isn't it? I mean, it's a little weird to think that the seed of this movie was planted in 2014. I mean, it's like it feels like crazy that it's a 9-year journey to get this far,
Yeah, and they've changed directors I don't know how many times. We had a running joke in our Discord for years of this is not a real movie. Like, this is never going to exist, Like, stop trying to make The Flash happen. It's not going to happen. It seemed like a cursed production, in part because it's like, why are we working so hard to get this person into the movie? I feel like it'd be pretty easy to just recast them with anybody would be fine.
Yeah, to Shane's point, they were not in much of it coming. That's what was always confusing to me is, they're behaving this way, all these kind of lack of apologies that they're missing for like months on end, just from like a responsibility point of view. That's probably not great.
Yeah.
And again, I kind of get if it's Daniel Day-Lewis, but I also would kind of get it if it's like, look, this is the Flash 4. We've made 3 of these. We got to just get this one out. But like, we're talking I don't think a lot of people would be too alarmed if it was a different Flash in this.
For sure.
Yeah. And also just to make sure we get the timeline straight as well, because I did a little digging on this because I figured it might come up. The movie shot principal photography throughout the summer of 2021 and then wrapped up in early 2022. Yep. And then at that point, principal photography was done and all the visual effects work started, et cetera, et cetera. The bad behavior with Ezra Miller started in the summer of 2022. So at that point, the movie had already wrapped and they were deep into the post-production process at that point. So I do just want to make that clear, just in terms of studio economics, that I understand. I'm not saying that I necessarily agree with it, but I understand what Warner Brothers did, which is to say that the movie was shot, it was done, and all the visual effects were being worked on at that point. And it's like the idea of replacing Ezra Miller when you've already spent $200 million on this movie is just, it's easy for someone on the internet to say, well, their behavior was really bad, he should have been recast. And it's like, that's not how it really works, folks. They've already sunk $200 million into this project. They're going to see it all the way through and hope for the best.
Unless it's Batgirl.
Yeah, unless it's Batgirl, then they'll sink it. Right. So I do just want to get that out there that for anybody who's listening who's like, Ezra should have been recast. It's like, maybe if it was day one, if it was an Eric Stoltz situation on Back to the Future and you've only shot like 2 weeks, yeah, fine, we can have that discussion. Once the movie's in the can, that discussion is over. It's done. We've sunk too much money into this ship.
The only pushback I have on that is that it didn't. I mean, like a lot of the stuff that came up after they'd already wrapped it, but like he full on strangled a person on tape in 2020. Like that's probably where we could just say, hey, you know what? We're gonna recast this person with Dylan O'Brien or again, like literally anyone. And even if you think that Ezra Miller is good in these movies, I obviously do not. I can't imagine there's too many people who are like, yeah, that's the reason I'm into The Flash is Ezra. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
it's like it would have been just to your point, Shane. Yes, like this was in the can. I think they really stuck their heads in the sand to keep this casting alive for a long time, and that made no sense. And so it invites the what are we doing here when all these other things are coming out. And it's like, well, we stuck by our guy through all this, and so now we're kind of stuck with them. And I don't know. I think that factors into the terrible box office because they've not been able to support these movies since Gunn came on board.
Right.
And they had Miller do like a little bit of red carpet stuff, but they're not out like, you know, doing the talk show circuit.
Yeah,
like
he's not on Hot Ones.
Right. And I don't know that would have, I don't know how much impact that has anymore in the year of our Lord 2023, but it didn't, it certainly didn't help.
Look, I think it has some impact because, regardless of whether it's this movie or any other, right now, I mean, as we record this, we're in the middle of a writer's strike. And so, there is no Tonight Show. There is no late night circuit at this moment, right? Like any show that has writers is just not there. And while I don't necessarily think that appearing on the Tonight Show is a
Corden
barometer,
went out way too early,
yeah.
This could have been his time.
Yeah. I look, while I don't necessarily think that folks that are our age or folks that are like under 40 really use the Tonight Show as a barometer of, of popularity anymore. People over 40 still do. I mean, I know a lot of folks my parents' age that still watch the Tonight Show and all that stuff kind of regularly. And so if you would have had, if you would have had Ben Affleck or Michael Keaton or Ezra, anybody appearing on these shows, I think it would have made at least a bit of an impact. So I'm not saying that that's the only reason this movie also underperformed at the box office this weekend, but I do think it's a chief ingredient for sure.
For sure, and it just adds to. I get that, like, Gunn's is in a bad spot at this point because these movies were all greenlit before he came on board, and
most of them were done. Yeah.
Right, and then he's working for the Zaz, which is got to be tough on everybody.
It seemed pretty rad for Chris Leak.
Yeah. But they
like to see Zucker do this.
Right. They've all of these movies now, this is 3 movies, Black Adam, Shazam 2 and this have just felt they tried really hard with this one, like, no, we might do more of these. Yeah, we're totally into this, but they all felt like they just had no support, and that leads to this like sort of feeling of just like worthlessness of like, okay, well, what's the point of this? Like, why am I here?
Pulls
like, even if this is good, what's gonna happen with it? Nothing, because
it's happening at a time where like people are getting cynical about the quantity of these kind of movies anyway, organically,
for sure.
So then you're putting them out kind of as filler, which I'm kind of sympathetic to Warner Brothers and Gunn on that, because you're you've made this move about the future of your studio. You're going to throw this new DC universe together. But you have these movies, to Shane's point, like in the can. So what do? If you come out and like really back them, it's confusing everyone. But if you totally cold shoulder them, it just plays in everyone's cynicism about this. And you know what I mean? It's a really hard thing to play. You're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, because it's not, it might just be total sunk cost. And then they're just going to show up in 2025 and it'll all seem like, oh, that's, what? Who cares that Black Adam bombed because they finally made the Superman movie or something, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Right.
But in the moment right now with, people aren't going to see like Guardians as much or Ant-Man and things like that. Things that are historically a little more successful, at least with mass audiences. So then you go, we're just kind of just ping-ponging out superhero movies and not really backing them. It's like everyone's just kind of going enough.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah. I
think the other thing that's also happening too, another ingredient in this stew, is that people are now, it's like a reflex where they just go, I can wait 45 days for this to hit, a streaming service, right? It's, unless you're Tom Cruise or unless you're Christopher Nolan, unless you're one of these guys that like raises a real big stink about like, my movie's only going to be in theaters for 6 months. That's the only way you can see it. And then maybe if you're lucky, I'll put it out on DVD. Unless you're one of those guys, everybody now just goes, it's fine. It'll be on HBO Max. It'll be on Max in a month, and I'll check it out there.
Totally. And you have Max now rebranding from the HBO, and one of their big pillars is like, we have WB movies quick. It's kind of marketing against going to see this in theaters as well, and aggressively, because they're trying to like relaunch that brand. So the timing was just really, I would say, piss poor for this, but also wasn't awesome either. So I want to talk more about it. So, okay, let's save the Keaton stuff. I want to talk to Brian about that a bit too, because I know he's a big Keaton person. But Shane, I want to talk to you about, I don't know if you listened to the Affleck on, I think, Smart List, but he was talking about how he finally figured out how to play Batman like in this movie once he's not doing it anymore. What did you think about Affleck's Batman in this?
I'm going to be honest. I was pumped when he showed up on screen. Because like, first off, it's like, because I've made no bones about the fact I love Ben Affleck as Batman. I think he's awesome. I think he really gets the darker side of the character. I like his take on the character. And when he launched out of that plane and he's on that cool bike, I was like, oh, this is great. Because also the other thing too, the trailers kind of did a kind of a little bit of a cloak and dagger. At least they hit it well enough that I didn't catch on to it. This is the first time in a movie ever, or at least in a like a live action movie post Adam West, that Batman has been in blue and gray, right? He's not in the right. He's not in just the all black or whatever. So he shows up and he starts doing his thing. And I'm like, this is cool. And then, and like I was enjoying it, right? And he's talking to Barry and he's being a badass and he's saving the day because he's Batman. He's cool. And then Wonder Woman shows up and we get the lasso of truth thing again. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, we're going for this Batman, huh? The jokey 2017 Justice League Batman. Oh, I thought we market corrected that we don't like that anymore. Like, oh, we're going for this jokey Batman now. Cool, I guess. So it was awesome to see him, and then it felt like the wind immediately got taken out of my sails when we did that stupid lasso truth bit again, and we got silly Batman. But still, all that to say, I love Ben Affleck. I think he's great. So I'll take more of him however I can get it. But yeah, it was like awesome up until the point it literally drove off a bridge, and then I was like, oh, I don't like this anymore.
Totally. Brian, what about you with the remnants? I shouldn't say just Affleck. The remnants of the DC verse showing up in this, aside from post-credit scene.
That opening scene was like maybe the worst opening scene I've ever seen in a movie. And so by the time that we actually have Affleck and Gal on screen together, it was just like I just kind of want to die. And then they're not in the movie anymore pretty much after that. So the baby shower, that's the worst thing I've ever seen in a movie, I think. I had 5 different people message or text me in the days leading up to this saying some variation of like, hey, the opening scene is terrible, you're going to die. Or my real friends being like, I almost want to pay to go see this movie again just so I can watch you have to watch the opening scene of this movie. And none of them were wrong. It was... I was in hell for that, like 15 minutes. I wanted to quit the pod. I almost texted you guys and said, actually, I think I'm done. I don't know if I can keep doing this anymore. It was terrible. So Affleck was fine by that point because it was just like, well, okay, at least this baby shower thing is done. It was perfect. I hate the costume I don't mind the color scheme, Shane. I think that's cool. But like, I think that his face looks stupid in the mask, like the tight grip.
It looked weird
face
in this
mask,
one.
cowl or whatever. I hate it. I think it looks stupid.
It looked weird in this one. Like it did, like I noticed, like because I've seen it twice now. And there's a couple of shots where his face looks scrunched in, like it was like weird CG on it. Yeah. And look, I want to be 100% clear. I'm not in the world's greatest shape, so I'm not calling the kettle black here. I've seen Ben Affleck. Like he just posted a picture last week that he's in incredible shape.
It's not that he's not in incredible shape. It's like steroid head, I think.
Right.
And then you have a mask, costume. Shane, you started this, Richard. You say, hey, he's really into these. That's the truth. I'm not the market for. I don't really care about the costumes. That's not the Batsuit is not a selling point for me. It can only be a detriment. It can only be the bat nipples or whatever this face mask was for Affleck and things like that. There's not going to be a time where like, man, the suit was the real. I love the suit because it reminded me of Batman number 463, or whatever. Like that's just not a thing that is part of it for me. It's almost like editing. It's like I'm only gonna notice it when it's really bad. And that was a bad Batman.
Well, no, I mean, what I'm asking is that the suit, once he steps off the bike, it's like, the suit kind of looked like a mocap suit. You know what I mean? Like it was gray and it had all this like weird armored plating on it. And the point I was trying to make earlier is, again, I'm not saying Ben Affleck isn't in shape. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I am saying is multiple shots where you see like all of his body. The suit like sagged and scrunched in like all the wrong places, like around his crotch area and around his like gut. And it's like, the Batsuit should not be doing this. Let me make that 100% clear. Like it shouldn't. Yeah. And it's like, we know we have a cool one. He looked awesome in Batman v Superman. Can we not just reuse that suit? And if you want to make it black and blue, just paint the cape and the gloves. But it was just like seeing it twice now. Like it threw me the first time, and it really threw me the second time. Where I'm like, why does it feel like this suit doesn't fit him at all? It's just weird,
Sure. Yeah. No, I get that. I liked having Wonder Woman show up. Sorry, that's the last thing I'll say. I like having Wonder Woman show up. It does feel like the fan service part of it doesn't bother me really.
Imagine
it's
no heaven.
It's just like
when she sang that, I thought it was great. Kind of.
The fan service part of it doesn't bother me. It's just like, okay, we're gonna do this cameo thing again. We're just gonna keep running it back with the Wonder Woman theme song and all that. And it's just, how many times do we get to do that before it doesn't really matter? Because I really like her. Those movies are some of the ones I dig in this universe. I like her in that role. I think that she's pretty dang good at it, and I would be happy to continue to have. She's the part of this universe that works to me. Like, I'm happy if you want to recast Batman and Aquaman and the Flash and Superman and everyone else. That's totally fine. I think it's cool that whatever. Like, I'm in support of it. You want to keep Wonder Woman? I think that's great too. How many times? This can't work over and over. We can't be doing this for 5 more movies where it's like, oh, Wonder Woman shows up here, it's
right.
All right, come on, like, we get it. Let's move on a little bit.
So bigger spoilers here, by the way, as we get into these cameos. Bigger shock to you, Brian, cameo in this, Clooney or the guy from those Sprint commercials?
Man, that's supposed to be Billy Crudup too, and so they took an L there. They lost Billy Crudup at some point in the many changeovers for this movie, and then they had to replace him with the Sprint guy. So,
yeah, I noticed that too. I was like, oh wait, we couldn't get Billy Crudup back. What the hell happened there?
No, that's a tough.
How they get Ron Livingston in 2022 or whenever they made this? That's what's tough. Those Sprint commercials right now.
Ron Livingston just got so much money from Sprint for really no reason, and it's one of my favorite things in all of advertising.
Shane, this is one of our bits that Brian and I are obsessed with, when companies pay for barely famous spokespeople, and you go, you could just have an anonymous person, right?
Yeah,
you could create your own flow
Sprint
from Progressive. If
right,
you would,
exactly, yeah. Sprint paid Ron Livingston a ton of money, and like 4% of people, this is like in 2016, like 20 years out for Office Space. And it's like, why did you pay Ron Livingston? You could have just gotten
guy from that one arc on Sex and the City.
Yeah,
that's weird.
Yeah. Just go on to Gallup photos or whatever, and just pick a just white dude that looks boring, and that guy will probably cost you $50,000, and you're good. You get the exact same amount of cachet. Going through, it gets a little cameo soupy, but it's multiverse and it's fun, and it's all, we all know the Keaton thing is there and a big part of why people are interested in this, at least like hardcore Batman movie fans. One thing I want to talk about, which was my biggest critique of this, and it was like such a bummer because I had heard that this was kind of cool and people were amped about it, but the minute I saw the trailer and saw it was Zod, I hate that villain so much in that Michael Shannon version of it. I don't know. I like Michael Shannon. I'm not a comic book guy. I'm sure Zod's cool. The merging of those two, I didn't like in Man of Steel. I just think it's weird tonally. Like, it just, the whole performance is off to me. So that like kind of kept me not exactly hyped for this version of it. But before we get into Keaton, I wanted to talk a little bit about Supergirl. Sasha Calle, right? Am I saying that correctly?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Was unfamiliar with her oeuvre, but I'm
not trying to be insulting, so I apologize to all the Sasha Calle fans out there if I am, but I don't think she had many credits to her name. I think she was quote unquote unknown. So
good. That's cool, and that's it looks like this was her. Yeah, she's got some Young and the Restless, so she's got some soap experience. So that's a bigger part than I expected in this. Like, that's a pretty, aside from the other Flash, a pretty big co-lead. How do we think she did?
I think she did fine. I mean, it's, look, again, the way that this story is structured, and kind of the point of one of the points of the movie is that there's no universe in which on this world that she doesn't like, you know, that the planet doesn't die with Zod. Yeah. So my point is she was kind of forgettable in this movie. She didn't really have that much to do. And so that's fine. She wasn't, this was not like a real meat on the bone type actor's role. All you had to do was look good in the suit, show up, throw a couple punches, and then you get killed at the end of the movie. So she did fine. You know what I mean? And I don't mean that as an insult whatsoever. She did exactly what she was asked to do, and she looked good doing it. But she didn't really have a ton of character development, and I can't really see much of a future of her as Supergirl, because that was the whole point, was she was just on this world or whatever. But yeah, fine. I mean, she did a totally adequate job for what she was asked to do, you know. But was it a memorable performance? Not really to me.
No, it's still, the flying around looks dumb in 2023. That's CGI wise. I just thought, not her fault at all. I'm just thinking about her character almost had this Tinkerbellian flutter to them a bit. And it was like, it took me out of her a little bit, just the way they did that effect. But Brian, what do you think about Zod? What do you think about Supergirl?
I don't love Zod. Michael Shannon is a real hit or miss. Like some of my, I mean, he has genuinely like some roles that I think are just incredible.
Yeah.
He's an incredible talent. And then there's times where I'm like, I am so tired of this. And I mean, he admitted and I don't blame him. Like, I would take the money all day too. But he straight up said, he's like, yeah, I wasn't real invested in this. I can't. And it kind of shows.
Yeah, it definitely
that was like
shows.
A throwback. Yeah. That was almost like, I'll give all the people involved in this movie some credit. Like, they are trying. There's effort being put forward by Ezra Miller twice over. And there's effort being put in by the rest. Even if you're not, I'm not really into this performance, they're trying. And that wasn't always the case. And sometimes it's not always the case in the MCU movies. Robert Redford mails in his role in Winter Soldier like hardcore. So it happens. That was kind of a hallmark, I think, of some of the DC Extended Universe movies, and it's not in this one. Shannon's kind of a whole throwback to the old way, because it was like, all right,
the Gene Hackman Superman performances.
Yeah, he clearly does not care about this at all. But no, I'm with you, Richard. I don't really know what it is. I can't really put my finger on it, but there's something about that character and or the performance that just I don't like, and it just kind of leaves me cold. So I wasn't super enthused that he showed back up as like sort of the big bad, but I don't know.
Then we have Dark Speedster too.
Right.
Cool name.
Yeah. So that wasn't great. I thought Supergirl was fine, and it was like a like multiverse, like the Doctor Strange movie when they have Krasinski and Patrick Stewart and whoever else show up there. I mean, obviously this is a bigger role than those guys had, but it was similar kind of vibe. Like, oh yeah, we can do a fun, just like kind of a throwaway character for this. And to your point, I mean, she looked good in the suit. She has some stage presence and some charisma. The character was just kind of there to die, I guess, or like maybe even not die. It was just like she's just kind of there, and that's okay. It was totally fun.
That's a perfect way to put it, Brian. That's the perfect analogy. It's like asking like, how's John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic? It's like he's fine. He's in the movie for 3 minutes. He did what he was asked to do, and then his character gets ripped to shreds on screen. It's hard to say he turned in a great performance because so little was asked of him.
I will say I thought that she and the special effects working together to make it looked a lot better when she had the suit on than it did. Like that opening scene when she's just gotten out of the jail and that looked terrible. That looked awful. Her flying looked like, that's obviously none of that is her fault at all whatsoever. Clearly special effects, they can only do as much as they could do on the short time. That scene was awful looking, and it made me really worried about what the third act was going to look like. From like, gosh, she just looks so stupid flying around, and the attacks look dumb. All this stuff kind of looks dumb, and it wasn't that way when it got to that sequence. So some of it was better effects, and some of it probably was like the look with the suit and all that kind of stuff looks better than I don't know, like a ratty jail prison outfit, you know.
We finally got Nick Cage Superman. We've only been waiting on that for 50 years.
Yeah. I mean, let's if we want to talk about it now, let's talk about that whole like when the worlds are colliding type deal. Well, let's hold on before we even get to that. I just like on a general sense, I want to just talk about the structure of the movie. The way the movie was written was fine. It's like so many major Flash stories are the same thing, which is the Flash makes a mistake, decides that he can run back in time to fix it, runs back in time, changes one thing, ruins a whole bunch of things, and then he spends the rest of the movie undoing what he did, and then when he gets back to the present, he changes like one little thing that makes the world a little bit better, right? It's like that storyline has been done to death in the Flash comics, and that's fine. I'm not knocking the screenwriters for writing it because this is the very first Flash movie, so you get to do the basic one, right? It's like you can't hold against Tim Burton for doing like the Wayne death scene because it's like, well, it was really the first Batman movie. You got to show that Wayne's getting killed, right? Now you can hold it against, if like Matt Reeves does it in this next one, it's like, oh, for God's sake, dude, we've seen this 10 times. But the structure of it was pretty standard, I think, and it wasn't terrible. It was fine. You know what I mean? It was I just want to ask, like, on a general structure level, like, did you guys would you have any problems with the movie? Like, did you think it was fine? Just the way that it was crafted, the story, etc.
I think that is one of the strengths of the movie, and it's unfortunate that we have such, at least I do, have so much multiverse fatigue right now. When this movie was written in 2018 or whatever, we did not have multiverse fatigue at that point. So, at the very least, I would say I'm not going to hold that against it. I thought that the structure was decent enough and a lot better in many ways than some of the previous DC EU movies. I think that there was something there, and even the execution is not terrible. It's just Ezra Miller's only been in, two versions of one movie basically at this point, but it does feel like this has been 40 movies at this point. And I don't know totally how to explain that. I think it's just goes back to, again, one of the major issues with this whole vision of the last 10 plus years is that they hired Zack Snyder. The second major issue is that they just refused to do things in a working order and had to jump so quickly to their version of the Avengers. And they've only been in one movie, 1.5 movies, whatever. But that 1.5 movies has taken a freaking decade to get through. And so it felt like we were treading on ground that I already knew. And my only background with this character is the 1.5 movies and probably 3 seasons in the background of The Flash that I watched, at some point when it was on, like, oh, this is fine. And so you're right. Like, this is the origin story in a lot of ways. You do have to introduce that, I guess, because if you haven't watched any Flash, you may not know any of these things. So, like, I understand it, but it also, I was like, pretty quickly was checking my watch. Was like, all right, I know all this stuff. Like, what are we doing? But to your point, Shane, I haven't read hardly any Flash comics, but this does seem to be the bit that Barry Allen's whole deal is just, well, I accidentally went back in time and messed something up. All right, well, let's go ahead and fix that, and here's a little tweak. So in some ways it's like, yeah, you're doing what the character does in the comics, and in some ways I'm like, but I'm not sure that we necessarily needed all that at the same time.
I agree. I mean, I'm willing to let all that go because it's the first Flash movie, right? It's like, like Stan Lee once said that every comic is somebody's first comic, and so this is probably someone's first exposure to the Flash. So I'm fine with
totally
with doing all that. I will say though, I do want to ask because I had a feeling you were not going to like it. I found like when you make a movie like this, you got like these movies have been done before, right? We can all agree. I mean, Marvel's done this 25 times, DC has done this 14 times. Where you got to do stuff that's new and it feels fresh and innovative, and it's stuff you haven't seen before. And I got to say, protecting a bunch of falling babies from a hospital is something that I haven't seen before. And so I rather enjoyed that sequence because it was visually inventive. I thought it was fairly clever. And obviously there's no real danger. You don't make a movie in 2023 where any baby and a dog is going to get hurt. So I thought it was fine. I'm just curious to hear, like, what about it, like, stylistically really kind of got your dander up there?
It looked terrible. I mean, I know you can't go up and throw 20 babies out of a top floor. Thanks a lot, Obama. But
Christopher Nolan would have done it. Christopher Nolan would have done it. You know what I mean?
That's right. You got to figure out a way to make that look better. Just straight up, just saying like it's a baby shower. I wanted to like set the theater on fire. It was the worst line I've ever heard in my life, and that made me insane. Up to that point, we've just gotten.
Did you put on your Carradine sunglasses? Or Caruso, rather, your Caruso sunglasses?
Yeah. Wow! Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, of course. Obviously. Always have him with me, just in case. You know, he's been on screen for 3 minutes, and I already am reminded of how much I hate The Flash, like, before we even get to the babies are falling out. Like, that didn't... Like, this Sheldon Cooper spectrum interpretation of The Flash, I cannot... I can't fathom that was the idea, that anyone thought that this was a good idea and that we've continued to stick with it. So I'm already, like, the babies haven't even fallen out of the building, and I'm already super annoyed by this character. And then we get, it's a baby shower, and then you watch him zip through, and I don't know, Shane, like it
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just
no.
curious,
I'm I genuinely, like I said in the Discord, I'm like, hey, if you like this movie, because the in our VIP, like the grades are all over the place on this one. So like if you liked it, that's great. Like I'm whatever, but I see your point of like you got to do something unique. I thought that this was a really stupid unique, and also I think that it is foolish to try to explain the science of all of this in this movie this far down the line of having had the Flash in this universe for, when was Batman v Superman? 2016?
2016, yeah.
Okay, so 7+ years of, like, I did not totally understand, because I thought that they did kind of a crap job of, like, explaining well, you can move this, but you can't move people, all this sort of stuff. I think that you should just cut that entirely. So, like, because none of it makes any sense, and we're not here to see we're not Neil deGrasse Tyson, and so we don't care about these things. Just like we're gonna make sure we're gonna put this baby into a microwave because that works for the science that we've established. What the crap are we doing? Did not understand, and just like the whole bit of like, well, before I save these babies, I've got to get into this. I got to get a burrito in, and I hated it. I viscerally hated the sequence, and at the same time was like, this looks like the worst video game I've ever seen in my life. Like I could not handle the terrible effects.
Yeah, it gave me a headache
sequence.
too. There was that gloss on everything. It was tough.
I think we can all agree that, like, again, I'm even willing to go with Andy Machete that, like, or was it Machete? Is that his name? I apologize if I'm butchering his name.
Muschietti is what I'm going with.
Muschietti, yeah. I'm even willing to go on the theory that, like, all the stuff in the time bubble was like his perception, so it looked, askew, whatever. Yeah. Fine, I'm willing to go with that. But I do agree that, like, there's a lot of CG in this movie that just doesn't look up to snuff, and it's like, that's not acceptable, And I do agree with you that, like, some of the baby stuff was, like, not great, and it's like, or even some of the stuff, like when Batman's getting dragged, behind that Hummer, it's like, oh, that didn't look phenomenal either. Yeah, the CG needed some work in this movie for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's get to the for the purposes of this podcast, I think we can all agree on the elephant in the room before we kind of grade this out. Keaton was back as Batman. Shane kind of teased it earlier with a bit of when he heard him say I'm Batman, Shane fired his popcorn into the air.
If he would have said I'm Batman Shane, I would have literally fainted. I would have been like, oh my God, he got my letters. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll let Shane close this thing down with like a more nuanced feeling of his thought. But Brian, what I know you're a big Keaton fan. How did it work for you?
I thought it was the best part of the movie by a mile, and I don't think that was just the nostalgia. I think Keaton rules. I think that he just has so much charisma and screen presence. It's unbelievable. I didn't love the entrance. I thought like Ninja old Batman was kind of dumb with his stupid flip flop and everything. I thought that was kind of dumb. But once once we settled in and we have this version of Batman, the one that we grew up with and stuff, I thought he was really cool, and I thought that those were the moments where the fan service, and it's very easy for me to say this because that's the only part of the fan service stuff that really appeals to me, I'm sure. So that's some of it, but I did think that that fan servicey stuff worked well. Like when he says "I'm Batman," that ruled. I thought that was a great sequence. Seeing them come into the Batcave and turn the lights on and see the Batmobile and the Batwing dropping down and just like he just resumed that persona that he has in the first movie in particular, but both of those movies with Returns. It was just like he dropped back into it. And it was just like, yeah, I'm older, and that's it. Like that's the only difference. Like the mannerisms were similar, and it just felt like, yeah, this is freaking Batman. And I thought that was pretty great to see him do it. It made me want more. It made me want a movie of this instead of him being a glorified cameo. You know,
Shane. Your whole life has been building to this. You never thought you'd see Keaton as Batman again, and now, really, what's the point? My bigger question is, what is the point of going on?
Yeah. Well, before we toss to me, like, how did you feel about it, Richard? Like, I mean, obviously you don't have the connection that I do, but we've known each other for a long time. We've watched a lot of these movies together. Like, was there any bit of you that was like, oh man, it's cool, Keaton's back? Like, how did you take it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I loved it. You know, I'm with Brian, same part of the movie, or best part of the movie, and with you completely, where I was transported to maybe really want like a Happy Meal with some orange high C.
That's so funny that you say that, because literally as we record, I'm staring at a Michael Keaton Batmobile toy that I got from a Happy Meal in 1992. It's on my desk. So yeah, again, I'm the prime market for this movie.
For sure. That's why you're here. But yeah, so all that kind of nostalgia pieces worked for me. He's definitely a persona as an actor. We know what Michael Keaton kind of brings to things. A wide range of types of movies, but he always has this sort of Michael Keaton. This has always been a bit of an aberration in his repertoire in terms of it's a little bit different tonally, cadence-wise, and some of the other things. It's not quite as kind of effervescent as what he does in a lot of other ways for purposefully. So yeah. And when I heard he was doing it, first thought I was like, oh, that must be a pretty good script. And you go, oh, well, or maybe they just money whipped him and, he's got Montana stuff to pay for or whatever. and then he kind of like, it seemed like he was in it for more than 1 minute and things like that as it kind of came on. So I was very interested in this and like what his level of commitment would be to it. Would he pull a Michael Shannon and just kind of, but he was, you're right. He was back in, he was older. It was still that same character. That character is pretty unique in terms of Men of Bat. Yeah, no, it was great. Especially when you start talking about, we touched on earlier, the things they did with AI and CG, the things they did with, Affleck and other cameos and all of that. This one felt much more grounded. Obviously, it's a bigger part of the movie, but like more grounded and more fun. And you're right, Brian. I was like, oh, I would watch. We always, we used to always make the joke about John Hamm as Superman, and then they'd say, well, he's too old, and we'd say, well, just do old Superman. It's like, oh yeah, just do old Batman with Michael Keaton. But write a movie about, there's comics about it, like, what's it like to be Batman in your 60s? Like that could be cool.
Sure.
And so yeah, Shane, thanks for asking. It was very fun. Those were the best Ezra Miller scenes too, I felt like, because that you have a good scene partner to kind of bounce things off of, and not just
for sure
a tennis ball or whatever he's doing most of the movie too, to his defense. So yeah, for sure. No, it worked for me.
Yeah, I'm sure people are curious to hear my thoughts. Yeah, look, I loved it. I mean, it was, it's fan servicey. Let's just call it what it is. But again, I'm a fan for this, so it worked for me. From the jump when he shows back up, it was awesome. It was so great to see him. I mean, there's that scene in the movie. I think the most indicative scene of him in this movie is after they break Supergirl out of that Russian prison. And there's a scene where he's staring at himself in a mirror while he stitches up a cut in his arm, and he's looking pretty ripped, and like he kind of stares at the mirror, and he's all clean shaven, and he kind of looks at himself and he nods, and it's like, yeah, I still got it. Like I can still do this. Yeah. And I guarantee you, no screenwriter wrote that scene. I guarantee you that Michael Keaton just said like, we need to put this in the movie. And he's right, because you look at him and you're like, man, he can still do this, and I want more of this. So, yeah, it was awesome to see him back in the movie. I thought he turned in an A-plus performance. Yeah, and it was awesome to see the Batman that I grew up with. And, you know, I've watched the 89 Batman well over 100 times. Like, I know that movie by heart at this point. So it was awesome to see him back and see him doing the thing. You know, and like, look, yeah, I understand, like, some people have said, like, oh, some of the more fan servicey lines were silly. And it's like, yeah, I'm sure they were. But there were also silly fan servicey lines in Star Wars that people liked. Sure. There were fan servicey lines in Spider-Man. So these are my fan servicey lines, and I like them. You know, I thought he was great. I think the explanation for why he stopped being Batman was awesome, because he was like, I won. I made Gotham a safe city. You know, it's cool. You know, so that was pretty neat. My only knock on his return, and who knows, maybe we'll get this scene, is that it was really disappointing that they uncover the Batmobile and then we don't get a scene with it. Like, that is the coolest Batmobile in the history of Batmobiles. I needed a scene with the Batmobile. But apparently the assembly cut of this movie was 4 hours long. And apparently Andy Machete, whatever his name is, he has said that there's a whole bunch of scenes that he really, really liked, and he's going to try to put them all on like a Blu-ray release or something. So there's probably going to be more scenes with Michael Keaton, with everybody, I guess, in there. You know, and so that'll be pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, seeing Michael Keaton back, you know, the real question is, can he still do this? And I think he definitively answered with a home run, slam dunk. Yeah, he still got it. He can still do this. So it was awesome to see him on screen at every given moment. You know, the scene where he's punching bad dudes in the Russian prison or whatever, and obviously it's a stunt double or whatever, but he's moving fast and it's awesome. It's like, yeah, this is great. This is exactly what I wanted to see. So he was. Look, I've long maintained, I've said it on this show for years and years, there's not a single movie in existence that isn't better if you put Batman in it, whether it's Schindler's List or 12 Years a Slave or The Danish Girl. I mean, any movie you can possibly think of is better if you put Batman in it. And so obviously whoever wrote this Flash movie, they got my note, and they decided to put multiple Batman in it. And look, it's a better movie because of the fact that Batman's in it. So I think we can all agree.
Ironically, the only exception to that is Batman v Superman.
Yeah. I do want to touch base real quickly, because we almost touched on it and then we moved on to a different subject. But did you guys get a kick out of when the worlds start colliding and, you know, the other Barrys trying to save everything and the worlds start collapsing in on each other? Did you guys enjoy some of just to recap, like some of the cameos you saw is the George Reeves Superman from the 1940s. You saw Adam West as Batman from the 60s TV show. You saw Christopher Reeve, and then that blonde actress who played Supergirl in some of those movies. I forgot what her name was. Apologies to her fans. And then
Helen
you got
Slater.
Who is it?
Helen Slater.
Helen Slater, yes. Apologies to the Slater estate. And then we got Nicolas Cage as Superman, which I thought was kind of a fun, fighting a giant spider, no less, which was kind of a fun inside joke. There's a documentary called The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened? And it's a documentary about the making of this movie. But in it, Kevin Smith tells the story about how he was going to write that movie, and the producer of the movie really wanted Superman to fight a giant spider, even though it made zero sense. So that's kind of a little inside nod to that. What else? There were some other cameos, and I feel like I'm forgetting them now off the top of my head. Who else showed up there?
It all went aboard of me once I got that Momoa at the end, man.
Yeah, those are the ones I recognized. I felt like the Nick Cage one was where the fan service went too far for me as a adjacent fan. I got the reference. The CGI was rough, so that probably didn't help, I'd say, for the 40th time in this episode. But that was where I was like, all right. Okay, and was feeling.
And I've said this now
for me.
Gosh, at least 20 episodes in a row, and even more so here. And I say it about every movie, and now, but this one really hurt. Where the heck was Dean Cain.
Yeah.
Waiting for the call for God's Not Dead 4.
Yeah, something tells me I know why Dean Cain was not invited back.
Sorbo's asking a little too much.
Do you remember that
A little too
early
big for his britches. So.
John Mulaney joke about him on Law and Order?
Yes.
Where he played the murderer, or he's in the lineup and he's the only famous.
I bet it's Dean Cain.
But he goes, I always wish the actors, whatever, would just go, is that, because he's playing whatever murderer in New York City. He's like, just halfway through, she's like, is that Dean Cain? Like, he's himself. It's Dean Cain. Cool. In my police lineup. Awesome. All right. No, that was cool. I thought it was, it's fun. It was a blur of things, kind of hyper. That's the point of these movies, I would imagine, is that kind of hyper imagery with the Flash. So that's fine. A lot to wash over pretty quickly. Kind of silly, but pulpy and fun, and that's fine. It could have leaned into that even more or less, and it would have worked maybe better. I don't know, but yeah, it was. I get it. I thought it was a fun time, and again, to Brian's point, 4 years ago, probably more exciting than when we've been multiverse to death. When we just got, Toby and Garfield last year, it just seems derivative, which it's probably not, but it just the mercy of release dates. Unfortunately, it just kind of doesn't pull out. It's not as surprising as it could have been.
For sure.
Yeah. Agreed. It feels like it's hitting the same notes, but it's hard to hold that against the movie.
No, it just doesn't work in the moment as well, because now it's everything's off, and then you start putting AI and all this face doubling technology, and you're like, all right, we're just gonna get everything to hell. That's going to be everyone's move if they the IP to something.
So let me ask you a question.
Well,
just
Oscar Schindler's in Spider-Man 4. Okay.
Let me ask you a quick question, because the rumors gotten out there that that Michael Keaton filmed some scenes for Aquaman. He filmed a glorified cameo for Aquaman. Then that got cut. Then Ben Affleck literally got busted by a Warner Brothers tour, walking around with Jason Momoa filming a cut. So, and now apparently, if the rumors are to be believed, Warner Brothers is cutting and recutting Aquaman again. Do we think that they're just going to replace that cameo? Do we think that they're going to get George Clooney back in a suit, and hopefully a nipple suit? Because I think that would be a nice touch.
Yeah, but only if the nipples are kind of saggier now.
He is 60.
Yeah.
And look, I'm not joking. In all sincerity, Clooney's awesome. He the thing that people don't understand is in the 90s, George Clooney was Bruce Wayne. Literally, he was the most billionaire playboy. He was.
I've always maintained this. I thought he was a pretty good Bruce Wayne. That movie's just awful. I mean, it's just an atrocious script. There's he gets way too much crap for that. I mean, he wasn't a great Batman, because he's one of those people that really seemed 50 even when he was 33.
Yeah.
But I thought he was an awesome Bruce Wayne. It's just the lines he was given to say were absurd.
And the suit was ridiculous. But yeah, obviously, you've seen Syriana. We've seen Michael Clayton. George Clooney's an incredible actor. You think if we gave him a real deal, serious Batman moment that he couldn't handle that? Of course not. He would crush it.
Yeah, he'd be good, but he also doesn't need money. That's what you have working against that idea.
I think it's just give him another swing at that.
He's got the thing about he and Affleck. They've got Tender Bar 2, so can they work that in?
He does have a movie he directed this year. That's coming out later.
Oh, what? Who's financing these at this point?
I think maybe he is.
Oh yeah, okay, that's a fair point.
Yeah, didn't you just say he had more money?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I financed it when I bought Casamigos 3 hours ago. Okay,
right? Yeah.
That
Nespresso money is going straight into the sucker. Yeah.
The man lives on Lake Como. He's doing fine.
Yeah. All right, should we grade this bad boy out?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
I will go first because I feel like you guys will be the most disparate in your grades. I'm going to give this a C-, which is, I think, the highest I've given a DC movie in a while. Brian, what about you?
Keaton's great. I do think that there's a story in here that's not terrible, and that's not always the case by any means with these movies. And I will give it just a little bit of slack of just like it's. Yeah, some of these are self-inflicted wounds, but like it's not. I have some sympathy, as you mentioned, Richard, for the studio and for Gunn especially, because this wasn't his deal at all. But like the timing on this just really is unfortunate, and so I give it just a tiny bit of slack for that. I cannot stand this lead like at all, and we didn't even get into how the original Barry Allen stops being Sheldon Cooper as soon as he crosses over into the other and starts dealing with frat boy sort of Barry Allen. I don't even know how to describe it. And that that also made me. I was like, why didn't we drop this years ago? Then I don't get it. I can't handle the character on Ezra Miller, and somehow the second version of Barry Allen made the original version look great. So that's a tough sell for me. Just put like anybody else in this, and I think that this is a passable movie for me, even while not totally selling me on it. But anyway, I'll go with a D. This is probably the worst movie that we have reviewed this year for me. But it's not the classic F minus as some of these other DC movies are.
All right, Shane.
It's a D.
I am going to give this a B plus, and I'm going to give it the highest B plus humanly imaginable, like 89.9. Right? I can't give it an A because there's too many strokes in the whoops. This should have been a little bit better column. But still, look, the minute, like Ben Affleck showed back up, anytime Batman was on screen, I was smiling and I was enjoying it. And is this a movie that I will watch again? Yeah, for sure. So I enjoyed it. I just wanted a little bit more from it. I feel like there were a few missteps here or there, but yeah, high B plus.
Nice. Well, that was The Flash. We've got more kind of this DC verse coming with Aquaman. And then probably something else, and then we get a refresh with the Gunn DC universe. Shane, when does that start? When is that?
Well, technically, if I understand correctly, Blue Beetle he is considering the first of the new. Now I think
it'll be like their Hulk, kind of like
before
Iron Man.
Ultimately, what that means to me is that Blue Beetle has no cameos, has no major important references to anything else. It's just a self-contained movie, so they can go, yeah, cool. This is the first one of the new DC universe or whatever. So technically Blue Beetle is the first one, and then I guess there's going to be a year-long gap while James Gunn writes and directs Superman. There's a couple of shows I think coming out. There's like an animated show.
That's just such a bad idea. Got so Warner Brothers, man.
Yeah, there's like an animated thing, and then I think also James Gunn is also working on Peacemaker season 2.
Yeah,
and that's going to be a part of it as well. But I think people are essentially just waiting for Superman, and that's going to be kind of the new. And then Andy, the same director who directed this movie, is directing Batman: Brave and the Bold. Which is the story of Batman and his son Damian, who was born from Talia al Ghul. They have a kid together, and he becomes Robin. It's a cool potential for a story because he was raised by a League of Assassins, so he's like this 8-year-old killing machine, and Batman's constantly like, no, we don't do that. We don't, he's like pulling him back. So I obviously there's no casting on that, but I wouldn't be surprised if Clooney shows up in that for a 5-minute thing, and then Flash does his thing and changes it over once again, and then we have a new Batman. But I think officially everybody's thinking that James Gunn's Superman movie is going to be the start of the, quote, new DCU.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, looking forward to that.
Do you want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere, and even earn money all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup's like, you can start creating today. Then, you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. and video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. Best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since we started using Spotify for Podcasters on Mad About Movies, it's made it super easy to get our show posted and out to all of the MAM fam. We highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to spotify.com/podcasters to get started.
Shall we give them a weekly recommend, gents?
Weekly recommend.
All right. Brian, what you got for us this week?
I'm going to recommend a show that I've recommended a couple times in the past, but I just finished my rewatch. It's probably, I don't know, top 3 or 5 favorite show of mine. And I watched, so anyway, it's Justified, which you can watch on Hulu. There's a new, I watched it over the last couple months, kind of background show, because I've watched it many times previously, but there's a new series, a new season, something coming mid-July called Justified. I think it's, what is it, Primeval City or something like that. It's great. It's one of my favorite shows. Timothy Oliphant's great in the role. There's a lot of great little supporting characters. Walton Goggins is awesome, just an awesome villain. Sometimes not villain, sometimes villain, back and forth. I don't know how many times I've rewatched the show, but it's many times. And so I just got done watching that again, and I highly, if you watch it when it's original run, or if you've never seen it before, now's the time to do it, because this new series is, like I said, it's coming out in July, and looks like it's going to be pretty fun. So I'm excited about that.
Awesome. Sounds good. Looking forward to that as well.
Nice. What you got, Richard?
You want me to go? I can go. Man, this one is not for everyone. This is a niche one, but I have been inside baseball. I've got a 8-month-old in 2 days, kiddo, work, all that stuff, and then we were renovating another cabin. So I've not been big on the culture front, other than things I've got to see for this here podcast. The only thing I've really been doing is listening to soccer books and things like that. Mm-hmm. So there's a good one, not for everyone, but if you're into this kind of thing, or just sort of history, sports history, all these. It's a new one that came out this year. It's The 3 Lives of the Kaiser by Uli Hesse, and it's a biography of Franz Beckenbauer, who was a great defender for Germany and for Bayern Munich, and also for the New York Cosmos. That whole story in America and soccer and all that, but also, just got everybody pregnant for 25. I think he's still getting people pregnant in his late 70s. The most fertile man of all time.
He was the OG Nick Cannon.
He was Franz Beckenbauer, and he then he got caught up later in life with a bunch of the stuff with Qatar getting the World Cup, some maybe underhand dealing. So it's kind of a fun, but also the whole time everyone that knows him likes him and finds him to be a very personable and fun person. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, and maybe, or just want to branch out a little bit, The 3 Lives of the Kaiser. It's about his playing career, his coaching career, and then his sort of football executive shady dealings with sovereign wealth states career. The 3 Lives of the Kaiser is very good, very well written, very fun little biography there. Shane, what you got?
Nice. I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to do 2 recommends, one real short and then one a little bit longer. The short one is, as of a day or 2 ago, per we're recording, season 3 of The Righteous Gemstones is back on HBO and Max. It has not lost a step. It's still hilariously funny. It's still a pretty good takedown of the evangelical megachurch movement. And it's really fun. So do check that out. It's great. Shameless.
It's incredibly realistic.
It's incredibly real. If you grew up in the South,
I can't watch it. It stresses me out.
Yeah,
too
it's
much.
incredible. That show is so
because it is
good.
Correct. Yeah,
yeah, because too much is. Yeah, it's absolutely right.
Yeah. When my wife was really into The Handmaid's Tale, and I was like, no, this is one step from reality right now. This is not interesting to me at all.
Yeah, we're one Ron DeSantis away from The Handmaid's Tale. So the second recommend I have, a bit of a shameless plug here. So Actually, Richard, Chase and I have started a podcast as of a couple months ago.
There are no other podcasts. This is the only podcast.
I know, no other podcast.
We made that very clear.
We started a podcast and we finally got into the game. It's called 2 Drink Maximum. It's an interview show where we interview guests that we find interesting over 2 drinks, 2 beverages. And we're just gearing up for season 2, which is going to start airing in July. So we've got some really interesting guests, some cool names, some people you've never heard of. But they're all interesting people who do interesting things or have interesting stories. We have a comic book writer coming on the show. We've got a person who found a dead body in his backyard. We've got a pharmaceutical rep who was involved with the original COVID vaccine, like all sorts of interesting stuff coming up. So please check us out. When you're done listening to every single episode of this show and subscribing to the Patreon for this show, then please check out our show, 2 Drink Maximum. You can find it, where podcasts are found.
Awesome. That's awesome, guys. I'm offended I haven't been invited to be on, but I'll get more interesting.
No, it's like I truly want to have both you guys on, but we've just been doing kind of like an in-person thing because we've done a couple Zoom episodes
fine.
and
that's fine. If you guys want to fly me out, that's cool.
That's what we'll do it. I'll send one of my jets out.
First class,
business class is fine. Because normally I can upgrade from there, but it's fine. But on your dime. But sure, we'll be there.
Done.
It's already 150 here, so Los Angeles sounds fabulous.
Yeah, it's like, this is going to sound silly. It's been warm here, which is like 78 degrees. I'm not throwing that in anybody's face. I'm just saying it feels warm. But I have sources in Texas that tell me it's 1.5 million degrees. So I feel
August already.
I feel it for you guys.
My AC went out tonight, like a couple hours before we went on the air, which is fun in Texas. And I was like, it's not even that, like, it is hot. It is. It's unbearably hot. But I was like, at temperature-wise, I looked. It's like 96. Feels like 111.
Yeah.
It's like, what the freak are we doing right now?
There was a line in the Ted Lasso finale where he says, "I've learned that air conditioning is not a right, it's a privilege." That's the most Kansas BS thing I've ever heard. Come spend 10 minutes in Texas. I will tell you that air conditioning is a fundamental human right. There's no, come on now.
No, definitely. Yeah. I'm sorry, Brian.
Well, good luck to both of you guys. Hopefully your air conditioners are up in working order and you guys don't melt over there because you can
come over here, Brian. You can come.
Yeah.
You can come. You can live in my shed. All right.
This was sounded fun. Like the best serial killer shit I've ever heard. Sorry.
But this was fun, Jane. Always good talking. Dikiyu with you, and I think that's how you say it. And Brian, it's always fun watching you have slow mental breakdowns at these. So
this stupid movie. I'm gonna be out next week because I have to go to camp. And man, could we not just push this 1 week?
Brian was so great, Shane. Like after the episode last week, he goes, "Hey, so next week, like we could do the Flash or Elementals, and then do the Flash the week after. I am out the week after, but like if you want to do the Flash the week after, I was like, I see what you're doing. Talking to the ultimate hustler
like,
here, baby."
Next week too.
I see right through your thin excuse of it.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, gentlemen, it's a pleasure as always. Looking forward to the next time we get to all congregate. Make sure you follow us at Mad About Movies podcast.com or the Mad About Movies Twitter handle or the aforementioned Mad About Movies podcast Discord, which you can find at Mad About Movies podcast /VIP. Always a pleasure being with both of you again. Looking forward and all that good stuff. Talk soon, and we'll see the rest of you at the cinema. Goodbye.
Hey baby, I hear the blues are calling, tossed salads and scrambled eggs. And maybe I seem a bit confused. Yeah, maybe, but I got you pegged. But I don't know what to do with those tossed salads and scrambled eggs. They're calling again. Scrambled eggs all over my face.
They're making me higher. Tossed salads and scrambled eggs.
They're calling again.